Welcome to the 2024 Utah Legislative Preview. I'm Catherine Bealey of the League of Women Voters of Utah. In our mission to empower voters and defend democracy, we are co-hosting this event with the American Association of University Women. I'm happy to introduce Terry Jewell of the AAUW, who will then pass this on to our fearless moderator, Lara Jones of KRCL's Radioactive. Terry?
Thank you, Kathy. You know, AAUW has supported women and girls in their pursuits of education and professional opportunities since 1881. And today, AAUW still supports women and girls in their educational pursuits, but we're also focused on pay equity and gender rights. See our website for more information, aauw.org. AAUW and the League have collaborated on a legislative preview for at least the last 10 years. We try to have a well-balanced group of legislators to provide a good preview of what to expect from the upcoming session. So, Lara, let's get started.
All right, let's do it. I believe I'm unmuted. I hope folks are joining in and playing along. I am Lara Jones from KRCL's Radioactive, weeknights at 6 on KRCL. And we have had a longstanding partnership with the League of Women Voters of Utah, in particular, to always share the people's business. I think it's a great partnership that will continue again this next legislative session. So let's get started with short intros from our lawmakers. We're going to start with Bennion, Democrat from District 41. Lynn, please give us a brief intro and describe your district too.
Okay. Well, I'm very glad to be here with you tonight. Our district in 41 includes Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. So that's Brighton and Alta that are towns now. And then it includes most of Cottonwood Heights and parts of Midvale, Murray, and Holiday. And I serve on natural resources with Representative Watkins and on political subdivisions. And I think Representative Lesser is coming back to that group. And I also serve on Veterans and Military Affairs Commission, and I'm very glad to be here with you tonight. Some of the bills I'll have this session involve short-term rentals, the impacts of institutional investors on our housing market, a riparian amendments bill, and a national infrastructure bank support resolution.
Thank you so much, Representative Bennion. We had invited Kera Birkeland, Republican from District 4. We hope she'll join before the end of our legislative preview. And so I'm going to go to our next Republican, Christine Watkins of 67. Sorry for calling an audible there, Christine. Tell us about your district and a bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you. I actually live in Carbon County, but the biggest city is Price. And I live on 2.5 acres, and I'm very happy to have the space and room that I have. My district is most of Duchesne County, all of Carbon, and most of Emory. I call myself kind of the fossil fuel corridor representative for the state of Utah. And I lived in Emory County for 28 years, and I've been in Carbon County for, oh gosh, I don't know, ever since 2000, so I guess 23 years. And I am on the Judicial Standing Committee. This is my second year of being on that committee. Usually I'm on education, but I was put into judicial. And then I've always been on natural resources. And I am the House Chair of the Child Welfare Oversight Subcommittee and the Native American Liaison Subcommittee. And I'm the House Chair of what we call the Beatles Sub-Appropriation Committee, which is Business, Economic Development, and Labor. And it is one that deals with money. So I have a number of bills ready to go because some of them didn't make the light of day last year, and so they're ready to go. And I deal, and my career was education. I was a teacher, been a principal just for a little while, and but that was a long time ago. but I've kind of got into the world of DCFS. So besides some of the mining and natural resource bills that I do, I also have a lot that deal with DCFS, and we can talk about those later.
And Children and Family Services, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Is that still the name of it with the reorganization that Governor Cox has
Ye-
done?
Yes, it is
Mhm.
still, it's under the health department, but it's DCFS, the Division of Child and Family Services.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Watkins. And now we're going to go to our next Democrat from District 10, Representative Rosemary Lesser. Hi.
Hi, it's great to be with all of you tonight and great to see my colleagues in the legislature. You know, we have the opportunity to serve with each other on a number of overlapping committees, and it really makes for such an opportunity for collaboration and collegiality. Representative Watkins serves as the chair of the Native American Liaison Committee that I'm on, and it's really always been a pleasure to serve with you on that committee as well. I represent House District 10, which includes Ogden, South Ogden, Riverdale, and Washington Terrace. And Weber State is in my district. So it's really great to have an academic institution of higher learning in my district, and makes for a lot of vibrancy in this community. I moved to Utah more than 30 years ago after I got out of the Air Force, where I had trained as an obstetrician gynecologist, and it's a natural place to be to come to Utah and welcome about 6,000 new babies. And so in 2021, I was appointed to the legislature following the unexpected passing of Representative Lou Shurtleff, and this will be my 4th legislative session. So I'm looking forward to talking with all of you about what's ahead, and I know that we have a lot to share.
Wonderful. I think that takes care of all of our intros as far as I'm aware. So let's get to some general questions. We're going to try and drill down over the time we have tonight. And if time at the end, folks can put some questions in the Q&A. We'll keep an eye on that. So first off, and Galen, we're going to start with you. I'm going to try and do my best to rotate who answers first. But in your opinion, what's the most important issue coming before the legislature in the 2024 session? You know, what's the most important bill in which you're involved? And let's go from there. Start with you, Representative Bennion.
So the governor in his budget calls it the Utah home, and it's the housing that is critically expensive and a problem in our state. And I am very concerned that it will not be possible for so many people in the younger generation to be able to afford a home. And so this is an area where I have focused since I was elected in 2020 and started serving in 2021. And some of the things that I have learned is that we have, for our federal court district, we've had studies comparing our state statute for renters to everyone else in that court district. And we have some of the worst policies for tenants. And because of this situation where many people are forced to be tenants because they can't afford a home, it's a particularly bad situation to be in, where those renters don't have a lot of rights in our state. So I'm concerned about that. But the bills I have this year, again, like I said, one of them would be the best state short-term rental bill that is out there in the whole country if we can pass it. And it just gives some foundation for good local governance. And then I do have a bill that would address institutional investors. Just today, I got an email from a young financial professional who, from his understanding, 27% of single-family homes purchased in Utah lately are by investors, of all types of investors. And so that's sad to see that people that have money are keeping the money, keeping the homes. And so that's something I'm working on, because as we know, the census finds that people that own homes have a 40% greater wealth than those who don't own a home. And as we know, if people keep paying their rent their whole life, they are never building up so that they don't have to pay rent, and never having that equity to put towards whatever other needs they have as they age. So that's one of the things that I think is crucial in our state.
It used to be the brain drain of our youth having to leave the state to find jobs and advancement. Now they got to leave the state to find housing. The jobs are here. We've got job growth. We don't have the housing. So I'm sure we'll get into more of that. So let's go to Christine Watkins, Republican, District 67. Same
Well,
question.
Okay, repeat it again to make sure I
Sure.
understand.
In your opinion, what's the most important issue before the next session? And what's the most important bill you're involved in?
Well, I will tell you, I can tell you what I think, but it never is what we think. We always have something pop up that becomes this big hot item, and it surprises us or takes us back a little bit. But for me and from my relatively large part of the state, it's energy. It's I mean, I'm on a different wavelength, obviously, than maybe the Democrats, but we still are similar. We all want clean energy. We all want all of those things that we're trying to do, but I don't think technology is quite where we want it to be, and that's the problem. And so, as I said, I'm the fossil fuel corridor of the state, and if everything were to shut down in my district, you would all be hurting. And so we have to figure out that fine line of maintaining cheaper utilities. A lot of poor people can't. I know what's happened in my house to my utilities, and I can't even imagine someone that's struggling, you know, what that must be for them. So we have that fine line of trying to keep our utilities where people can afford them, but also keep the operation of the power plants, et cetera, going until we get a way to find a way to really store energy from wind and solar, because we have a lot of solar where we are producing that. So it's not like that we're against it, but I just don't feel like we're ready. So I do know that the Department of Energy for the state, they've been rewriting what they have going, our policy for Utah. So I'm excited to see that. They may be done, but I've just been super busy, so I haven't looked at it. But and I will. And for me, even though I do have a bill dealing with energy, it's what we call protected because it's not written yet. It's a priority, but it hasn't been written. But we have what we call the San Rafael Research Center in Emory County, and it is amazing. I mean, I've seen it from not day one, but maybe day two to what it is now. And besides that, we have a lot of land next to it for manufacturing and all the things that we want to be able to do. And we have the room, and we do have the water, and we do have all the things we need for that. So it's working to make it a state entity. And so we're working on it, but it's not done. So I can't even tell you a lot other than that we've got a plan, and that's going to be an important one for my area.
All right. And I think as we go along, we're going to see how much all of these issues intersect or overlap.
Yeah.
But they're all connected. We, the voting public, really can't afford to treat them independently, even though that's how they get pursued in the people's house. And so that's one of the things I think is hard for folks to deal with when it comes to our polarized age. All right, so now we're going to go to Rosemary Lesser, Democrat from District 10. Same question. Most important issue to come before this next session, which starts January 16th, and the most important bill you're working on.
Well, I certainly agree with my colleagues of their areas that are of concern, but especially as a representative on the Wasatch Front, I have to say that I believe that initiatives to save the Great Salt Lake are going to really be important for us to embrace. we had some starts, and we got a bit of a reprieve from our amazing snowpack last year. However, that underscores how much we still have to go. There is still an awful lot of exposed lake bed. And my colleagues and I are asking questions like, what initiatives did we embrace, such as optimization of agricultural use of water, but how does that translate into water going into the Great Salt Lake? And so that's really, I think, going to be one of the things we're focusing on. One of the bills that I have been involved with that was a committee bill in the Transportation Committee was actually combining our upcoming development of our Utah Trails Network and combining canal trails and primarily containing canals, because as many of you know, as students of Utah history, our canals are, many more than 100 years old, with aging infrastructure and leakiness, and we cannot afford to have our precious resources of water leaking into the soil. Although it's nice to refill an aquifer, but on the other hand, evaporation and things like that. So my canal trails bill is one of the things that will contribute, hopefully, to the Great Salt Lake. And there are a number of Great Salt Lake related bills. Representative Bennion and I are both on the Great Salt Lake Caucus. So we work together, and members of that caucus have specific bills designed to save this incredibly precious resource. And I think all of you know how this not only affects the physical health and mental health of our communities, but absolutely has the potential to have a huge economic impact on our state if the Great Salt Lake does not remain robust. So watch out for the Great Salt Lake this session.
I'm really concerned because I think there's a little bit of snow in the valley today, but not much more going on, right? So we'll see how our weather forecast affects legislation if there's not a lot of snow dropping on the Capitol during the session. Representative Lesser. All right, still on this kind of subject of general questions, let's go back and do another round. Representative Bennion, we'll just keep this order for right now. With the renovation of the Capitol and a loss of the cafeteria and the gathering area, can any of you help the public recreate an open community space? There's so much cross-pollination that would happen, and there's been some changes on public spaces at the Capitol.
Yeah.
So Representative Bennion.
And because I was one of the things that brought me, the major thing that brought me to be serving in office is my involvement with one of those groups that meets at the Capitol, Women's State Legislative Council of Utah. That is a 104-year-old bipartisan group that meets at the Capitol to discuss and learn about the bills there. So there are public areas still in the Senate building. There are none really in the House building. And then in the Capitol down near the stairwells, there are public areas, but there is not a cafeteria really. There's just, I think, some vending machines. And so it has changed that. And I'm not sure the purpose for all that change that they've had. But I hope people continue to come, because the public, it's the people's house.
That's right. Representative Watkins, I hear there's going to be a food truck plan in rotation, but who wants to go out and in the cold? The cross-pollination is what we've lost, right, Representative Watkins?
Well, and I've been there long enough. I started in 2009, so I do remember the cafeteria. In fact, I was devastated when we lost that. But I don't remember all the plans for the new building that's coming, but I'm going to hope that that's in there. I do believe that taking down the old one and putting in the new one's going to be so much better. We're going to have a great museum for everyone to be able to go to, especially the school kids. It's going to make the trip for school kids much, much better, I think. And so I don't know, I can't remember exactly what's going to be with the new building, but I agree with you as we've had meetings during the summer, and I don't live up there, so I don't go there all the time. Watching all of the things that I grew to love disappear, it's like, okay, they better be having a good plan. But I do trust them. I've seen the pictures of it, and I think it's going to be amazing. And sometimes we just have to go through
The growing pains.
the growing pains. And I will say, we needed those extra rooms, as much as I hated to lose the cafeteria, for committee rooms. And that was another reason they did that. And so just like everything else, you just kind of suck it up and say, okay, it's the good stuff's coming.
Yeah. And for folks that are unfamiliar with what's going on, Representative Lesser, maybe you can kind of sketch that. But there was this big office building on the extreme north end of the campus, and it's been torn down, is being rebuilt. And so those folks had to go somewhere. And that's kind of what's impacted the public spaces. But what are your thoughts on recreating this open community space during this next session that starts January 16th?
Well, for one thing, I noticed even yesterday how much progress is being made on the new building, which will house our Utah State Museum, which will have a restaurant. So that's a great thing. On the other hand, I am a huge food truck fan. And so if we need to use food trucks as a patch in between, I think that that's great. And quite honestly, I hope the food trucks stay, because these provide incredible opportunities for small business owners, often who use food trucks as a conduit to a regular restaurant. And so I am excited about the food trucks as a patch. So that's the way it goes. And I'm very, very thrilled about our Utah State Museum. I think it is going to be robust and beautiful, and will honor the incredible heritage that we love about the state.
So folks, pack a lunch, prepare for the weather.
We
And
pack
don't be
lunches.
afraid. Don't be afraid to contact your lawmakers in advance, but while you're there, you can still send notes in. Are we back to doing that post-pandemic? We're not sending notes in yet? All right, we got to get that going again. All right, Representative Lesser, going to stick with you for this next question. Voting rights in the election process. What is your opinion on alternative voting methods, such as ranked choice voting, approval voting, and the present universal vote by mail ballot system?
Well, I am incredibly enthused about universal vote by mail. I have spent time with our own county clerk. I have seen how they are so incredibly diligent and precise in checking signatures and how ballots are processed. So I am very enthused about people having the opportunity to vote by mail. I think that we in Utah can be the shining light for the rest of the country as far as the integrity of our vote by mail system. So I'm very proud of that. And I am not particularly enthused about a bill that's ahead that would make vote by mail an opt-in procedure, because I think that confusion among voters is something that's very real. And when considering that we've had a decade of automatic vote by mail, to change the rules would be really problematic. So I will be opposing that effort to put restrictions on vote by mail. As far as ranked choice voting, I am pleased to see that it is a pilot, and communities who decide that they want to embrace it, that they want to try it, are able to do so. And their effort, we call the states the laboratories of democracy. Well, quite honestly, our cities are laboratories of democracy as well. Approval voting is so interesting because this is something that originated as early as in Athens, when people would put a stone in front of the names of the candidates. And at least you knew pretty quickly whether you won or not, you know, if you had 6 stones or something, and there's something to be said for that ease of voting. So approval voting is really actually fairly easy to do electronically. Ranked choice voting is a little more complicated in the electronic sphere, but for the places that want to try it, I think it's really a great idea.
All right, we're going to go to Representative Christine Watkins next on the same question, your opinion on alternative voting methods.
Well, I too am a great supporter of vote by mail, and I agree. Most people, seriously, most people are working so hard to stay afloat and function in their lives that if we say, oh, you need to opt in, they won't even pay attention to it. They'll just assume that ballot's going to come. We were one of 2 counties this last time that something happened and our ballots did not come. And people kept waiting for them to come. And there were people that did not vote, even though we put it out on the news and everything, go to the county building, that's where we're going to vote. So I always have been in favor of voting by mail, and it should be, it just comes to you. I agree. I think we have a great process in Utah. I am not a fan of ranked choice. I agree. If a city wants to do that, then that's up to their leaders and their constituents. But and I live in the county, so I don't ever get to vote for anything in the city, but I am not a fan of it. I'm just not. To me, it's confusing and for people. And so I'm not a favor of that. The approval vote, really and truly, I don't know enough about it to even be dangerous. So I'm just going to tell you, I just love vote by mail. I think we've been doing it long enough, and the whole state did not do it all at once. It was a few counties and then a few more counties and a few more. So we worked out any bugs a long time ago, and it's one of the things that saved us during COVID, et cetera, is we already had that down. We are really good about that. So that's mine.
Thank you so much, Representative Galen Bennion. Same question.
Okay, and I also really appreciate vote by mail. My husband, like Representative Lesser, is a physician, and those schedules that are hard to get to the ballot box or trying to go with young children, there are so many barriers for people to get to a ballot box. So I think that it's wonderful that we have them, that ballot in your home gives you time to study the judges or study other things on the ballot. With ranked choice voting, I agree. I think it's wonderful to have it be something that cities can opt in to use. I think it was 2 years ago after this, not this last session, but the one before, they had the Sutherland Institute and the University of Utah had an event to talk about ranked choice voting, and feedback from the Lieutenant Governor and from the University of Utah study on it. And one of the problems with ranked choice voting across county boundaries is that currently our county, from what I'm remembering from that presentation, is that currently our county clerks run the county elections and the Lieutenant Governor oversees the whole process. And so if we had ranked choice voting across county lines, which even now some of our Senate districts go across county lines, there might be House, obviously there are House districts that do that too, especially in rural Utah. And so that would make the process different. And so I also remember that when we were discussing having it be for the state and for counties, that our past, I had phone calls with our past county clerk, Sherry Swenson, and she was concerned that with a large ballot like Sandy had, with 8 people running for mayor, that could be a very expensive thing to mail out, especially if you put all of the races for the state. You can imagine that it would be complex, but I do think it's a good thing for us to be exploring at the city level. And I have the sense that there are still people in our state and nation who are confused and have questions about the voting process. So I think it's good to keep it just to that pilot for now and not go into approval voting just for people's trust in the system and consistency.
Kathy Beely, yes, please do alert me to questions that are relevant to the topic at hand. Just calling an audible there. And we received a question from someone who thinks the citizens should vote on ranked choice voting or other alternative methods rather than a city council. And that's the process we've had with these pilots, is city councils deciding and opting in. Should this be a referendum? Really quickly, Representative Bennion, yes or no?
I think for this at the city level, yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Representative Lesser, what do you think? Yes or no? Unmute.
I say no because I let the city council has opportunity for people to have input before they vote. But, remember, unless you can do it in the context of a different election, an individual election is a fairly expensive process to do. So to do it just for one topic would be a pretty expensive thing to have. But so that's why
Yeah.
I would stick with city council.
Okay. Representative Watkins, what say you?
I say that the constituents should have a say in it. It needs to be explained so they understand it, so that they don't walk away in frustration. So I don't care. I mean, obviously they can vote yes or no, but I think their voting is so important to people that having a say in something like that, I think for me, that would be important.
And I'd hoped that Representative Birkeland had joined us by now. She has HB 92 voting amendments, which according to Ben Winslow of Fox 13 would make vote by mail, quote, opt-in instead of just automatically mailing ballots to all active registered voters. You want to look up that bill again, folks, that is HB 92. It's available at le.utah.gov. Your tax dollars at work to help you track bills. All right, Representative Watkins, we're going to stick with you and head to natural resources now as a topic. What bills do you anticipate having to do with preserving the Great Salt Lake, such as water conservation, changes in agriculture, or other efforts? We'll start right there, Representative Watkins.
Where I live, we don't impact the Great Salt Lake, and we understand the issues. I definitely understand the issues, but I haven't paid attention to any of the bills. I know we've had a number in the past where we're dealing with things, but we're dealing with our own water issues. And so, and which are critical. I'm going to tell you, we have Schofield Reservoir. If it dries up, we have no water. End of conversation. So, so we hope and pray for snow and rain and stuff, but I pay attention during the session to what we're doing with the Great Salt Lake, and I support anything that's reasonable and fair, but
I understand. All right. And you see me looking at my phone, and so I'm trying to find some tidbits that relate to our conversation. And again, Ben Winslow, excellent Fox 13 reporter, part of the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, 20 minutes ago posted a new proposal on Utah's Capitol Hill would pay farmers to send some of the water to the Great Salt Lake instead of trying to eke out another harvest. So look for that story. Let's go to Rosemary Lesser. What do you think about Great Salt Lake?
Well,
I know that's one of your issues.
It certainly is one of my issues, and there's a few different things that I think will be important. I know that Representative Snyder, who is also a member of our Great Salt Lake Caucus, is running a bill to establish the infrastructure that it's going to take to physically get water to the Great Salt Lake. So I certainly support that. Representative Owens has bills that include decreasing the amount of turf that is really not needed. Now, this does not mean that we are going to turn into a land of rocks, but there are certainly areas that don't need 100% of the land covered with turf. And one other thing as an aside, speaking of turf, is that there are really exciting things that are happening in our state that are sort of secondary to be water savings. For instance, the university, or Utah State University, has extensive seed research going on to develop grasses that use less water. This is some of the research that we also partner with Israel, who have really mastered the agricultural pivots to optimize water. In fact, even to create plants that can grow with less than optimal water, sort of brackish water. So a few other, let's see, a few other Great Salt Lake
Any
bills.
gray water issues? Any gray water
Yes.
bills?
Yeah, well, yes, as I don't think that there's a lot of gray water, because the problem is that household water generally needs to go to the lake. That recycling household water actually is counter to water going to the lake. So at least for our area, maybe different for Representative Watkins' area, but for our area, water that's flushed and down drains is best served to the lake. An issue that Representative Bennion certainly knows a lot about is the wetlands, and preserving the wetlands is going to be really incredible, and avoiding building on the wetlands is going to be really important. You know, several of us are old enough to remember Joni Mitchell's famous song about paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. Well, we have to make absolutely certain that we are just incredibly conscious about wetlands and avoid building things like inland ports in areas that are on the wetlands. So those are some of the bills that I see coming to save the Great Salt Lake, saving it. And by the way, I saw that Representative Owens also had a bill that has to do with actually water as part of science curriculum in the elementary schools. So
Wow.
always good to start upstream, as they say.
Yeah, Friends of Great Salt Lake has a great curriculum. For folks listening going, why isn't my child learning about that? Contact the Friends of the Great Salt Lake. Representative Bennion, I know you want to get on this one. So what are your thoughts about bills that have to do with preserving the Great Salt Lake?
And so Representative Lesser brought up the bill that Representative Snyder has. And I was at the Water Task Force meeting yesterday, and he was presenting that bill to them. And so it's based on the legislative audit that found we do not have a water plan as a state, and that they were concerned that we are lacking that. In that audit, it found that we have $38 billion that we need to put into our infrastructure in this state. 38
Holy money moly.
Yeah. That to upgrade our dams, our aqueducts, and the pipes that feed our cities. So I don't know if that even includes the city, the municipal ones. I'm not sure on that. So this bill that he has would also give 2 years for the Department of Water Resources to discover and meet with people to find how we're going to fund that. And he realizes that will take some time. And that bill did not receive approval yet from the Water Task Force because it's so complex. But it's important that he's tackling that because it's a very hard question that we need to solve. But one of the things that I've asked to be added to the chat is something I learned about when I was at the National Caucus of State Legislators. Nationally, there is a bill to start another national infrastructure bank. Our nation has had an infrastructure bank in the past. We had one at the beginning of the country. We had one after the Civil War. We had one after the Depression, or with the Depression to pull us out of the Depression. And across the country, we're not the only state with a lot of infrastructure needs. In the past, these public funds were used for housing. And that's one of the reasons that we have a housing crisis is that we haven't been investing in public housing as we have in the past, or in cutting the costs of housing like we did for the vets after World War II. So and a lot of these economists that are pushing this national infrastructure bank are concerned that our nation is headed for a recession. We know that federally we have a huge deficit, that we can't keep pulling on Fed's money for these needs that we had in the past that built these dams. And so I will have a resolution in support of a national infrastructure bank, because this is like any other bank. It's not federal money. It's started by investors who get bonds from the nation, and then it grows because of people taking money out of the bank, just like any other bank. And it would help us fund the billions, trillions of dollars that China is putting into their country, that we need to put into ours to have things like fast rail.
All right, we're going to stick with you and go to inland port because it's been mentioned here. So we're going to do a round on the inland port. And in particular, let me just expand on this basic question about your thoughts on transparency related to the Utah inland port. But we have a question here from a participant on this, taking in this panel. In the last year, 7 inland port project areas have been approved and 3 more proposed. 6 of these will directly impact the Great Salt Lake. I'm thinking of the Weber one in particular, where they're talking about maybe moving the wetlands or some other way rerouting them. So communities are often left in the dark, a lot of taxpayer money spent, and there are no studies showing a need for all this logistics-based development. In fact, the Utah Investigative Journalism Project, I believe, at the University of Utah with KUER has called into question the facts and figures on this. Anyway, so besides your concerns about transparency or lack, maybe you don't have concerns, would you support an in-depth legislative audit of the Utah Inland Port Authority, including a performance audit? Representative Bennion, then we'll go Watkins, then we'll go Lesser.
So I would definitely support that. And the legislative auditors have done recently, maybe 2 years ago, a legislative audit on the inland port that found major problems that have led to new leadership. I have attended some of their meetings. I'm concerned that Victoria Petro, that's from Salt Lake City, that's on that, is not a voting member. I'm concerned that they are in the wetlands in so many places, their ideas. And I think one of the places that we as citizens can be addressing our concerns is to that Great Salt Lake Commissioner, Brian Steed, and that we should be addressing those questions to him, because from what I understand, he has the power to stop them or to limit them, because he has complete control over that lake, and he is very responsible for what happens to it. And my interactions with him have led me to trust him. He's very knowledgeable and I believe dedicated to saving the lake. And I think he is someone that could make a difference. So I would put a lot of pressure towards him, because he is someone that can interact there.
By pressure, we're talking about reaching out, letting it be known your thoughts, etc.,
To him.
contacting your lawmakers and asking them to as well. Representative Watkins, your thoughts on transparency and calls for perhaps an audit of UWEPA.
Well, just like Representative Bennion said, they did have an audit, and it changed board members. It obviously the whole thing was changed, and I know some of those people, and I've seen a change in direction. And for rural Utah, that's my passion, is rural Utah. We are excited to have these inland ports, but I will also say that if there's going to be a port that would negatively impact the Great Salt Lake, I think we would all be concerned about that. And I will second what Representative Bennion said about Brian Steed, because I worked with him in other capacities as he kind of moved his way up. And he's an honorable man, and I think he would be doing the right thing. So I'm just going to say I don't know what's going on. I don't know that we need another audit. They're expensive, they're time consuming, and they pull away from other audits that haven't been done for a long time. And so since I know this one was done recently, and people are watching, they are really watching. So in the legislature as well as everyone else. So I'm going to put my trust into those people, and along with Brian.
All right, thank you so much, Representative Watkins. Representative Lesser, I think since this last big audit we're talking about, it was the multiple ports that have sprung up since then. I believe also a recommendation for a more auditing as well. What are your thoughts on UEPA's transparency, or your support or concerns about maybe doing more audits? Are they cost effective? Just need you to unmute there, Representative Lesser. It catches us all.
You were so kind to say that. Thank you. Well, the thing about it is that a lot has actually changed since the last audit. You know, in terms of their function and some of the reporting that has come out, even with regard to leases in the monthly six figures that are being having taxpayer dollar money spent for an empty lot. And these are things that our auditors are very good at uncovering, and when they uncover them, they somehow get adjusted. Again, I will be the third person to praise Commissioner Steed. He is a very well situated as the commissioner of the Great Salt Lake and the head of the Waterland Institute at Utah State University. So he is really involved in the science of this. I also trust him, and I think that he will play an important role in this balance with the inland port. In my own area, I really question the expansiveness, 9,000 acres. And one of the things that the inland port has fallen victim to is not recognizing the cost of what they're doing. You know, building on wetlands from not only the economic point, but is a very, very expensive thing to do. And as we look at our state's resources and basic stuff like the reservoir in Carbon County and things like that, I think about spending just incredible amounts of money to essentially, once again, build a parking lot.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And if you've just joined us, we are doing a legislative preview here. And we had hoped to have Representative Kera Birkeland with us. Who knows? Maybe we'll have an appearance here before the end, but we have Representative Bennion, Democrat from District 41, Representative Rosemary Lesser, Democrat of District 10, and Representative Christine Watkins, Republican from District 67. And that's just the old radio person in me. I know you can all see that on the screen, so forgive me. Let's go to our next question about education. And I think we're going to stick with you, Representative Lesser. What is happening with the Utah Fits All Scholarship? How do you anticipate that this will affect other areas of public education funding?
Well, this is a tough one, and the Utah Fits All Scholarship has not gone into effect yet. So we haven't had a chance to see what happens, but we do know that $42 million is being appropriated to support private and homeschool options for a limited number of individuals. I think that there's a few things that might be some good fine tuning on this is accountability in education. We have a very robust system of accountability for our public schools and our charter schools. And it seems that for individuals who take funding from the taxpayers, that there should be some accountability to ensure educational outcomes. I think we need to be very, very careful and watchful because voucher programs in other states have led to massive subscription and expenditures. So that's something that I think we need to be careful for, especially as our state continues to drop the income tax rate. We will have less income coming in. So we're talking about spending more and bringing in less. And, you know, that's basic math 101, that what's going to happen when you spend more and bring in less. So I think we need to watch on the Utah Fits.
All right. Representative Watkins, I believe you were a teacher and a principal, so I'm curious what your take is on this as a lawmaker.
Well, I'm a strong fan and advocate for public schools. Been around the block. for a long time in education. And I will tell you, I was one of those that went out and got signatures to when the legislature a long time ago funded a voucher bill, and we were able to defeat that. Now, and I was that way for a very, very long time. And then I had started attending different conventions, trying to wrap my head around all of the things that this Utah Fits All thing does. But, and I explained this to someone else this last summer that, you know, and it wasn't just COVID, our world was changing in education. A lot of people were not happy with what was going on in public schools. Now, is it everybody? No, a lot of people are very happy. I'm raising a grandson. He's in our public school system, and I'm so happy with what they're doing. But a lot of people, it doesn't fit their need. And I will say, as Representative Lesser indicated, we know that it's not perfect, because we haven't even started it yet. And we will find things in it that we'll want to change. And we're great at that in the legislature. We pass things all the time, and the next year or two we come back and we change it. But I will also tell you, I was there when charter schools came in. I actually fought charter schools. I was going to take money away from my schools, but and they did not have a great deal of oversight. They do now. Because of the things that happened over the years, we learned that they needed to have basically the same oversight as traditional public schools. And so I know that whatever just doesn't quite work out, whether any of us will be there to fix that, it will get fixed, because people will demand that. Even those that are involved in that program will want it to be successful and have the funding that they need.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Representative Bennion on this question of Utah Fits All scholarship and public education funding in the 2024 session starting January 16th.
Right. So I voted against the voucher bill or the Utah Fits All scholarship. One of the reasons is that we have had a scholarship bill smaller that was for special ed, and it was underutilized. Also, Canyon School District is the major, I represent Canyons and Granite school districts, and Canyons is one of the better off school districts in our state. And even they are very concerned that the money that they've lost and will lose through this exchange takes away that little narrow margin that they have to be able to do everything that they're doing. Our schools have taken on so many things because things are so much more complex than when I was a student here in Utah. We have more students with special needs. We have refugee students that speak other languages. We have a tight economy where it's hard for our teachers and paraprofessionals to afford living here. So these are all things that are different than when I was growing up here, that are a stress on our schools. Canyons offers a student, I'm going to forget the name of it, but it's if you as a student have broken rules and laws, they have a justice system within that school.
Oh, a student court?
Yes. And I mean, they're doing so many things to support and help our students. And so I am concerned that this is taking away from them at this time of such need.
The peer court. That's the word we're
Peer
looking
court.
for, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you.
All right, we got a question submitted from the Peanut Gallery, and this is related to education. I want to go with this here. Considering the crushing student debt that is drowning young people who want to pursue higher ed, does our panel think there might be room in the state budget to provide 2 years free tuition, our vaunted community college system? It seems that Utah typically has a surplus of some sort. Representative Bennion, we'll start with you.
I would be for doing all we can to help our students. Education is the impetus that helps us all reach our potential, whether that is a career in tech or another field or at the university. Every year, Salt Lake Community College invites those of us, at least within traveling distance, to come and meet with them. And they are very concerned that they've had less students attending. And I think that cost is a big part of it. And when their families can't afford a home, how can they then try to help their children go to college? So I I I don't we've had things from the Kim Gardner Foundation. They said they gave a report saying this is a crisis time in a way, a pivotal time in Utah where we should be investing more than ever before. And so we have that big rainy day fund. I would be glad to use some of that rainy day fund to help make college the first 2 years more inexpensive, especially through our community colleges. I have not my own children, but my nieces and nephews have gone through SLIC those first 2 years, and especially when students are not sure of their route yet, what degree they want, to be spending less money those first 2 years and getting their skills ready for the full university is a wonderful option.
I'm gonna go back to Representative Watkins and then Representative Lesser. I decided Representative Watkins, again, former teacher, former principal, conservative Republican, I'm guessing. What are your thoughts about 2 years free tuition?
Well, you know, I grew up here in Utah, but my last 4 years, 9 through 12, I was in California. And I could have stayed there and gone to 2 years free college and chose not to. I came back to Utah State and worked. I cleaned homes, I worked as a waitress, did all of that kind of stuff. But obviously, tuition was nothing like it is nowadays. But I do know that many of the universities are offering, and plus our tech schools, scholarships to help with their education. And you don't have to have a GPA of 4.0 to get those. You just have to want to go to school. I know that one of the things that they're pursuing is changing the requirements for your degree. In other words, some of the lower level classes, are they really necessary for you to learn whatever you want to be? So I mean, I had a young student email me about this just a little while ago, because she said, what do I do? Because I want to be able to buy a home. How do I get a degree, etc. But even SLIC offers a free education to people if they reach out and they need it. I've been there when they've talked about it. So I think if someone really wants to go to school, there's a way. And I don't think the state can afford 2 years of college. We look at what we struggle to provide the programs that we have, and we still have people who say, cut those programs, you're affecting our lives, and the taxes are too high, and et cetera, et cetera. So I would be very much against that, but I also know that being against it, that there are ways for kids to get help going to school.
And Representative Lesser on this issue of perhaps 2 years of tuition for
Well,
higher education. Just 1 second. I remember a plan about, well, maybe in this reimagining of education, we need to add 2 years to public education because of how things have changed, how information, the massive knowledge that we're trying to impart has grown so much. Representative Lesser, your thoughts?
Well, one solution that Utah has really been embracing, and I think that has the potential to go even further, is concurrent enrollment. And right off the bat is if students can essentially wipe out a year of college tuition by essentially having it be paid for as part of our public education, that has the potential to, decrease the overall college expense. I think that realistically, it would be very hard to get 2-year college paid for entirely from our rainy day fund. I would support it, but I just don't see that that is going to be one of the priorities to get it across the line, even though I recognize that the college debt is problematic for people. I also think, just backing up a little bit, is courses in financial literacy, I think, would go a long way for high school students, because part of the problem is that college funding has people just don't recognize the consequences sometimes of the loans that they're taking out, whether it be for college or credit card debt and things like that. And it would be really great if there was some understanding of, just back to basics on, consumer finance. Now, I'm old enough to remember that one of the required courses that I had to take was home economics. And one of the home economics topics was personal finance. And as somebody who made my own students, my own kids, specialize in personal finance, I think that there would be a place for that. So in answer to the questioner's query, yes, I think that that would relieve a lot of burden from students. I don't think that it's going to be politically viable in our state, but I do think that there are other ways that we can try to cut college costs, and not only that, for the technical colleges as well, that also have concurrent enrollment with the high schools too.
Well, and our
And so-
technical colleges are so underutilized, and there's so many jobs that they train for that start off with really good starting salaries. That education and awareness about those programs. And two other thoughts here, given what we've just talked about. One is that the concurrent enrollment success, to me, speaks to the need to maybe add 2 years or really rethink the K through 12 curriculum and how it serves folks going into higher ed. And the other one is an anonymous comment added to what I'm seeing on my side of the camera here, is a gentleman, or I'm not sure if they're a gentleman or not, to tell you the truth. They run a program that gives 148 scholarships each year, and they have over 8,000 apply for those 148. So I think we maybe need some more education about scholarships. I know if you go to your student council, you're going to get that, but maybe there's a class that needs to be offered. Maybe there's a bigger pipeline to those scholarships that needs to happen. We've got about 25 minutes left in our legislative preview here with the League of Women Voters of Utah and the American Association of University Women and our guests. I'm going to go to equality of opportunity, which is kind of what we're talking about here when it comes to education. According to a recent Chamber of Commerce review, Utah's gender pay gap is the nation's third worst, with men making about 37% more than women in Utah. In a review of median earnings for full-time workers, that leaves women with a median income of $16,562 below men on average. Does the legislature, and especially do women legislators, have a plan to address this disparity, even just a legislative study of the disparity, and ways in which it may be rectified in Utah? Let's go to Representative Watkins on this issue.
Well, I don't know of any bills that are going to be addressing that, and or some of the things you talked about, because I know we have Dr. Susan Madsen, who does tons of research. And
Utah Women in Leadership Project out of Utah State.
Yes, and she's an amazing person. So why would we have anybody else? Because she's already done it for us. And
But lawmakers don't like other people's studies. So
most of us women like hers.
Yes,
She does a good job. And really and truly, it's based pretty much on true data and data, however you say it. And so, and I get her information all the time, and anybody can. All you have to do is sign up. So, but I will also say, because I spent my career in education, it didn't matter whether you were male or female. We had a salary schedule, and everybody just got plugged into it, and you went that way. And so I personally have never dealt with that, but I will tell you that there are women, and I have to just speak from rural, because I've never lived in a big city. So for those of you in urban, I apologize. But a lot of the women in my area choose not to go to school. You know, it's back in the day. I think we have a few more. I know women are going more than men now, going back to school, but a lot of women get married and raise their families, and they'll go to work, but they'll work at like a gas station, you know, a Maverick, a Top, whatever all those places are that you get gas, and so they'll work there. And I don't know how they pay there, but they're very content as a rule to stay there. I will tell you, as a teacher, when we would have the paraprofessionals work for us, we have a program right now that will take paraprofessionals and help them pay for their education to become teachers. And that's a state program. So and you'd be surprised how many don't want to do that. They're very content to stay where they are. So some of it is just who we are and what our goals are. And some of us are very driven, others are just very content to bring in an extra check, but they want to have that freedom to stay home and do some of those other things. And that's not a bad thing. I would never say that's a bad thing. It's just a personal choice.
Understand. All right, Representative Lesser, let's go to you on this pay disparity question and any
Well,
bills that you're aware of, et cetera.
Well, thank you. As a matter of fact, I am working on a bill that is related to this, and that has to do with asking what a person's salary history was as when they apply for a job. And I want to put this in context to some of the very successful programs that Governor Cox has and Lieutenant Governor Henderson have started, such as the returnship program and Talent Ready, and changing the requirements for many jobs in the state and what we call skill-based hiring. So in this space, the typical human resources queries that often led to the pay disparities are going by the wayside. And so that you look at the skills that somebody has, including somebody who ultimately, you know, as Representative Watkins was talking about, people who work in a gasoline, you know, convenience
Quickie
store.
Mart, stuff like that, yeah.
You know, those people are actually, I mean, they are supply chain masters. They are human, you know, they are therapists. They do all sorts of things that would allow them actually, if they desired, and I appreciate that. So what we're trying to do in my bill is to actually, I'm working with some of the state's human resources professionals who have been working on essentially the next generation of human resources, and that is not regarding the salary that you previously had. We know that people step away from the workforce. And, you know, certainly in an inflation era and with wages going up, if you stepped away 3 years ago, your salary history is going to be a salary that is considerably lower. And when somebody starts out low, they're going to be low through most of their career, and they have a hard time catching up. So I have been working along with Representative Bennion in Dr. Madsen's Bolder Way Forward, and the gender wage gap is one of the things we're looking at, and looking at various solutions like not automatically assuming that the previous salary that somebody had is what their entry point should be.
Yeah, Representative Bennion, if you'd like to build on that, it sounds like you're coordinating on this bill, but also I think more certificates are going to be coming into the lead position on your resume. And Google has been doing a ton in the community to provide training and other platforms as well. So Representative Bennion, where do you think this needs to go?
So I, like all of us that serve, at least that are here on this panel, that serve in the legislature, the work that Dr. Madsen's doing is phenomenal. I'm just so impressed by her tireless organization and work on this. One of the things that her studies have shown is that the girls in our schools are behind in math by I think it's 8th grade, significantly behind. And that puts them behind for the jobs that they might be interested in medicine or in science if they don't have those skills. And as we talk about that pay disparity, I am one of those women that did choose to stay home. My husband was in the military, and as we moved around, it just did not make sense to have me. We needed to have some stability at home with 4 kids. So I didn't see the problem until my constituents started talking with me. And I heard from one who works in a university as a professor and is paid less than a male associate professor in her same department. And that when she went to her dean and her chair, they didn't do anything. They didn't find it to be a problem. So I know that it is a problem from other women who have told me, I live in Utah, I don't work for a Utah company, and I never would. So I know that we have loss of wonderful employees that could be working here in Utah because they don't feel that women are valued in our state, and that the pay equity is worse by double for our minority women. And so that is a great concern to me.
We're going to kind of stay with this issue of some situations that affect women, and we're rapidly closing out of time. So we're going to be a little briefer here because I want to get another one in after this about message bills. So this one, though, about healthcare, I've been reading stories out of Idaho. I've been starting to hear it at our medical school. Is the legislature considering how Utah's abortion laws may affect the education and number of OBGYNs in Utah? And I asked this question as the daughter of an OBGYN. And understanding for several decades this conversation behind the scenes. So Representative Bennion, your thoughts?
This is not, so in the legislature, we have to limit ourselves somewhat in the way, and so I am very glad that I have colleagues that they're on the committees that hear these bills. So personally, I hope that our legislature will look at that problem because, wow, even when we have good health care, I've spoken to 2 young women recently who had babies, and the anesthetic didn't work and they felt their cesarean sections. You know, I mean, giving birth is can be a traumatic and loss of life experience. So it is so crucial that we have good providers and that we take care of the complexity that pregnancy is and deal with infections or other problems that can happen during a pregnancy and always keep that mother healthy.
And aside from the question of abortion, if it should be allowed, et cetera, what I'm talking about is the unintended fallout. And I'm looking at a news story in October from CBS News. Hopeless and frustrated is the quote. Idaho's abortion ban is driving OBGYNs out of the state. And we are, the family state. We give birth to lots of babies, and there's already a shortage of OBGYNs and has been for a long time. So Representative Watkins, what are your concerns about that? Have you heard any talk about this issue, this aspect of the issue? But I don't think it's a lot of attention yet.
Yeah, I think I read the same article because I thought, oh my goodness, that's certainly an unintended consequence. It's not only happening here. I think it's happening in other states that have the stricter anti-abortion laws on the books. I have not heard of any bills. We are a supermajority, and I don't know if that will be addressed. I think it would be probably almost an emergency if we had to. And I understand where the physicians are coming from. They don't want to deal with laws that could inhibit or constrict how they do their businesses and stuff. But I'm not aware of anything except that I am aware of the issue. And that's as far as I can go.
Representative Lesser.
Well, I am certainly in the middle of this one because as an obstetrician myself, and it is absolutely true that Idaho has seen massive defection of OBGYN doctors from their state. And the thing about the concern has to do with their perception that the legislature wants to intervene in the doctor-patient relationship. And, knowing from my own experience how important that relationship is, and you as the daughter of an obstetrician know, that bond that you have, that trust, even though we know that trust has been a problem, but that when an outside agency says that the decisions that the two, well, it's often not two, it's, families and clergy and all that involved in these difficult decisions, and to have an outsider come in and say, sorry, what you have thoughtfully and prayerfully concluded doesn't conform with our values is problematic. And right now we have a bit of a pass in the Utah because we have, the trigger ban has been enjoined by the courts. But the reality is, as number of applicants decline for OBGYN residencies around the country, this will take a long time to overcome and is absolutely an unintended consequence. And, I know my very own daughter, who's an OBGYN doctor, would not come to practice in Utah.
I was going to ask kind of something like that. And that's interesting within your own family that this is playing out. Do you think lawmakers need to ask the University of Utah School of Medicine a few more pointed questions about how this is impacting applications there? Because where you go to med school or your residency can, in large part, determine where you will set up practice.
Well, there were faculty from the University of Utah who gave testimony in Health and Human Services to that very point. It was not particularly well received, and I think we're going to just need to see a little bit more about what happens. I'm interested to see what our Supreme Court has to say.
I do want to close with message bills, but I'm going to try and slip in a question about air quality that we received. Are you aware of any bills to improve our air quality? For instance, funding fully free public transportation. Representative Lesser, we'll start with you.
Well, I know that we have had a few, free
Free Fair February.
free Februaries and things like that. And in my own community, we have 3 years of free fares with our rapid transit in Ogden. So those are really exciting things that are already happening. I believe that there are some bills involving trying to cap methane as a potent producer of carbon dioxide release and so forth, and global warming. So those are some of the ones that we have been looking at, and trying to expand rapid transit, trying to build houses around transit centers and things like that. So those are some of the initiatives for clean air that I've seen.
Representative
And
Watkins.
also things like better trade-ins with lawnmowers that actually are an incredible polluter, and having trade-ins for electric lawnmowers, which is another initiative too.
State of Utah has done that for quite a number of years, but expanding would be interesting. Representative Watkins, you're down there in the fossil fuel corridor. What do you think about this?
Well, I have beautiful air all the time.
Rub it in.
I'm just saying, again, I do watch what bills come forward, and I do not ignore them. I understand most of the people live on the Wasatch Front, and very cognizant of what it can do to their health. And so if I can, I support. I will tell you, if it does interfere with our economic development or the economy that we have in my 3 counties, then sometimes it's a different issue. We are struggling. I mean, I have one county that's doing fairly well, but the other 2, we're not growing. We're losing businesses that pay well regularly. So we're trying to reinvent ourselves, but we do have beautiful air. And I just know that I try to support when I can what other representatives do up on the Wasatch Front.
Wonderful. Representative Bennion, air quality.
Okay. I was going to mention that I think Representative Owens will have a bill regarding those two-stroke gas mowers and leaf blowers that they put out, what, I can't remember, hundreds of cars put out. They're really, really bad. Another thing for us to remember is that our buildings are, as we are getting our electric vehicles and Tier 3 gasoline, buildings are starting to be one of the major causes of air pollution. And unfortunately, our state legislature has, and the state, our building codes were updated last year, but not to the level of national and to the levels that will help with reducing greenhouse gases. So that's another concern.
All right. I'm going to wrap in message bills to the question of DEI and what we're hearing from Governor Cox in particular about DEI in higher education and desire to eradicate certain programs. So let's talk message bills. Let's talk diversity, equity, and inclusion from a policy standpoint. Representative Bennion, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on this issue and what you've read in the press, what you're hearing bill-wise.
So again, I'm not in the caucus that is probably writing those bills. I think that it's unfortunate what Governor Cox has said. He has wonderful people in his administration, like Nubia Pena, working for these same goals. And so it's sad for me to hear what he has said, because and I think it's this week that the state school board is considering some things about the same issues and equity and inclusion. And so there are so many ways that we're different than one another, and we need to always be looking for ways to help everyone achieve their greatest potential, especially as our state now is so many minorities in our state. And if we don't help all of those children reach their potential as in the public schools and in higher ed, we are doing a disservice to the state.
And as we go to Representative Lesser here, I just want to bring in a headline from the Salt Lake Tribune, nonprofit news organization now. And this is a story from January 2nd of just this year by Scott Pierce. Headline: Governor Cox touted his action on diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Now he says university DEI statements border on evil, and to be mindful of folks that we have a Utah compact on racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. Representative Lesser, your thoughts?
Well, I think it would be useful to kind of rewind and consider the basic principles that caused us to embrace that One Utah Compact in our very recent past. And I guess the thing about it is that what concerns me is the perception that DEI initiatives are divisive. And when I think of, for instance, at the university, Weber State, which is in the district that I represent, has recently achieved designation as a Hispanic specialty college. And there is a term that's applied to that.
Yes.
I can't remember it. But in any event, the way I look at it is, like, for instance, in higher ed, that each university's goal should be to do what it takes to help the students who enter learn and thrive and achieve. And the way that with DEI initiatives, with affinity groups, whether they be for the women's group, the Hispanic group, the LGBTQ group, and so forth, those are social networks that are really important. And certainly, during COVID, we realized how important people need to bond together. Now, people are thinking that this is new and divisive. Let's face it, people have been bonding together in groups like themselves for a long, long time, probably about the time that they were doing approval voting in Greece. So the fear that people, gathering together to get support and get encouragement from people that have a similar background as they do should not be viewed as something threatening and divisive. And quite honestly, the other thing about it is the perception is that people are just in that one group and that's it. And that's just not true. And I certainly see that in Weber State. We have a number of DEI initiatives, and yet we have people also participating in the whole of the university. And so I think that we need to look very carefully at what are we trying to achieve by calling this divisive and evil. I think that we're trying to achieve great opportunities for people that are the diversity of Utah that we embrace, and that we need to encourage that, not discourage it.
We've long had different student unions, Black student union, Hispanic student union, Middle Eastern students, et cetera, at a variety of institutions that's usually coming up from the students, not being dictated by the administration of a university, college, or what have you, saying, you will form this union. It's saying, hey, we'd like to band together and have a club, et cetera. So Representative Watkins will give you the last word on DEI and what seems like going to be an incredible session for message bills on this.
Well, there are a couple out there that will, I'm pretty well, I think, will not allow that type of thinking, questioning when people are being hired by a university. I think that's kind of what brought this up, unless I've been reading incorrectly. And I know there are people that say, well, it wasn't happening, but it actually was, maybe not other places. And a lot of universities were kind of doing away with it when they were interviewing people to work, but I can guarantee you it will probably not be allowed. But I will say, I was talking to someone the other day, and they brought up Weber State University, and they had, this was within the last year, a spouse was attending a classroom, and the professor said over and over and over again that if you were white, you were automatically racist. And the spouse raised their hand and said, no, I disagree with you. I'm not. And it got kind of negative and maybe a wee bit uncomfortable. And afterwards, the professor said, well, yeah, I was probably wrong. And they said, and then please apologize to the class. And they said, no. So there are a lot of things out there. It's an uncomfortable world we live in right now. I'm sorry, it just is. And I wish it wasn't. I wish it was more like when I was young. It was a different world. But there are sometimes we have to legislate that some of these things don't go on, and it has nothing to do with most of the clubs. I think once in a while you get a club that really goes beyond what we all want to see. But I really think most of this was coming from hiring practices, and I could be wrong because I'm not. I have a university in my community, but I have nothing to do with that.
And I've had a colleague or a friend rather that was applying for a university-based job, and I don't recall which university, but they were working on their statement of support for diversity initiatives in the course of their career. And I'm like, what? Why is that part of what you're applying for? So I understand it. And to me, it points to the need to have more conversation, more sunshine, more shine on it. Sunshine's the best disinfectant as far as journalists are concerned. I think a lot of people. I want to thank you all for giving an hour and a half of your time tonight, and all of you who are taking this in remotely. I appreciate that. I just wanted to get from each of you how folks can get in touch with you during the legislative session and your preferred mode of comment. One of the things I've also noticed is that the general public doing copy-paste campaigns to lawmakers doesn't work. It gets counted in bulk as one comment. So along with how people can get in touch, what you want to hear from folks on an issue. Representative Watkins, we'll start with you.
For me, I do. I read all my emails, But a lot of people don't want to take the time to email, so I'll tell them my cell number. It's 435-650-1969, and I love text messages. Phone calls are a little tricky because, as my colleagues know, we're in committee meetings a lot, and it's just really difficult. I'll answer if it's my grandson. That's about it. In a meeting, I answer my phone. I had someone call a year ago at 11:30 at night, and they were stunned when I answered the phone. But I really like text messages because I can deal with it quickly, or I can say, "Hey, would you text me back a little bit later?" Or "This is my answer." And I just like to hear if something's a little dicey. I like to hear how people feel about it, because especially if it's something for me, if it's an urban issue, because I depend on my urban colleagues to inform me on that just as much as they count on me and a few others to educate them about rural issues, because we may live in the same state, but we don't live in the same world, so to speak, as far as what we have to deal with.
And your email, which folks, you can find all their contact info at le.utah.gov, Christine Watkins at le.utah.gov. Representative Bennion.
Okay, and I also I read the emails that come to me, and my email is glbennion@le.utah.gov. And I also appreciate texts, and the number you can text me at is 385-224-9197. And we also have interns. And our interns, that is an amazing experience for them. Today, I'm getting in touch with my intern for the first time. They are college students, and they are a tremendous help to us. And you can come to the Capitol, and our interns can help you meet with me, can help you. I have constituents or other people come join me on the House floor. And outside of the session isn't even, like after the session or in the summer is a great time to develop a relationship with your legislators.
Excellent. And just a quick question follow up there for you. I'm guessing you don't like the bulk copy paste either, right?
Oh, no. The one, I'm sure that Representative Watkins will remember this. When Casey Snyder had the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Trail cams.
The trail cams bill. Wow.
Was that for or against? Excuse me, was that for or against trail cam bills?
Against.
All right, Representative Lesser, bring it on home for us. How can
Okay,
folks
I
get in
am
touch with you?
emails and texts. Those are the two things. And I think the problem is that although it's great to carry out a conversation, as Representative Watkins just said, we are in the public space, whether it be committees on the floor, and just taking a voice phone call is extremely hard to do. So we can carry on a much better conversation back and forth, either with emails or with that. And the other thing is that it's really a good idea to describe yourself as a constituent, and be honest about it. Don't say I'm your constituent from St. George when I'm the representative from Ogden. So, be honest about whether you're a constituent or not.
All right, thank you so much. Kathy Beely, I don't know if you're there and can pop back on, but the League of Women Voters of Utah does have weekly meetings, I believe virtual and perhaps in person. Kathy, if you want to fill folks in, I just want to say thank you to everyone, all our representatives, the League and AAUW. It was a privilege to talk with y'all. Good luck for 45 days starting January 16th. Kathy Beely, League
Thank
of
you,
Women
Lara.
Voters of Utah.
Yeah, and we will be there for your 45 days. In fact, we will be at the nonpartisan nonprofit day on the Hill on the 16th. I think we'll be there at 7:30.
It's
So
It's 8 to 2, so.
Anyway, thank you all for all the work you do, and thank you, Laura, for being a great moderator.
You're welcome. Have a great session, everyone. Thanks for joining our live preview of the 2024 general session of the Utah Legislature. Have a great night.